It's time now for another Ask the Expert with Brenda Hollingsworth from Auger Hollingsworth. Send us your questions at ottawa.morning@ctv.ca, and we'll get to them at the end of our chat. Right now, we're going to go to scenario number one. Welcome, Brenda, by the way.
Much.
Great to have you on.
Great to be here.
And loving picking your legal brain here.
Yeah, my pleasure.
So we got a scenario here. Okay, you're riding the city bus. The driver makes a sudden stop and you go flying forward. You land on your knee and suffer a fracture. You need physio and you're off work. Can you sue, and who will pay for your physio and loss of income? Brenda.
Right. So this is a scenario we see fairly often. We used to see it more when the buses sort of jerked a bit more. They're a little smoother now, but it does happen.
Yep.
So if a bus is involved in a collision, then it's obvious. You either sue the city or the driver who caused the accident, or most commonly both. But when it's something that happens without a collision, the rules are tricky. So in order to be able to successfully sue a city for a municipal bus sort of causing a jerking motion, you'd have to be able to prove that the driver did something out of the ordinary. And what we have found is that most of the time when city bus drivers sort of stop suddenly or do something jerky, it's because of another driver, an unidentified driver. So typically what we do is sue the unidentified driver. All that to say is there doesn't have to be a collision for there to be a lawsuit, and it's something that you should really contact a lawyer about.
Okay.
Now, in terms of physio, if the bus was in a collision, you'd be able to claim accident benefits. Without a collision, you can't. And so that's legislation that came into place 5 or 6 years ago. And so you're kind of on your own for physio. You'd be able to claim what you spent in the lawsuit, but nobody's going to fund it as you go. And a lot of people have, real challenge because of that. So if you have workplace benefits, then you're probably fine. But if you don't, that's something that you're going to have to fund on your own. And that is a real challenge for people in Ontario.
Okay, Brenda, if it happens to you, you're on the bus, you go flying because of jerky movement from the bus driver. Now you're in a situation where you need medical attention. But in that moment when you're like, uh-oh, broke something, uh-oh, I'm in trouble, what do you do? Do you get the bus driver's name and do you take down the bus number?
Yeah.
Do you ask for witnesses to come forward and say he was driving erratically? Like, what do you do?
So bus drivers are trained to deal with medical emergencies. Okay. And so as long as you speak up, or maybe the driver saw you go flying, but as long as you speak up, they have a protocol that they follow. They typically stop the bus. They typically call for someone to come. Somebody from the city will come and they will do a report there on the spot. If the police need to come, if an ambulance needs to come, there's a pretty good protocol. But let's say you're not sure, like you're able to get up, the adrenaline gets you up and you just want to get off the bus.
You're a little embarrassed, maybe.
Yeah. So if you can get the bus number, that is really helpful, just in case. The drivers, we have seen cards that the drivers will give passengers that maybe has the bus number or their name or something, but make sure you know the route, make sure you know the time, make sure you know where you got off the bus.
Okay.
And they are pretty good at being able to track what bus with GPS and all that.
Yes.
We are typically able to figure out what bus you were on as long as you have that basic information.
Okay, and then if the bus driver is at fault, it's proven, you go to a lawyer, you got the information, okay, this is a bus I took, okay, it was determined he's at fault. What kind of compensation? You can't get compensation for physio, but what can you get?
Yeah, you can get pain and suffering, all the things you could get in a car accident.
Yeah.
So pain and suffering, loss of income, your medical expenses. They won't fund it as you go, but they'll refund it and they'll pay for your future medical expenses.
Yeah.
So all the normal things. We've probably, over the last 18 years, we've probably had 24 of these cases where people have had good compensation. So it's definitely worth calling a lawyer.
Very important to do that.
And not just in Ottawa, right?
Yeah.
Any municipality.
8:43, we are back with Ask the Expert and Brenda Hollingsworth of Auger Hollingsworth. If you got any questions for Brenda, legal questions, send them our way. We'll get them to Brenda. You'll get expert advice. Ottawa.morning@ctv.ca. We're also on Facebook as well. So, Brenda, we've got scenario number 2 for you.
Okay.
Here we go. You are on government property. It's a raised platform with a ledge up to your knees. You're on your phone. You take a step backwards and fall over the ledge. You hit the ground 8 feet below, ouch, and suffer many fractures. Can you sue? Are there time limits? Brenda.
Yeah, so this is sort of an amalgamation of a number of scenarios that we've had. People fall over ledges, like they just do. And so in a case like this, the first thing that we would do is go and investigate the actual location, because there are rules about how high barriers have to be when you're on a raised platform. And if it goes up to your knees, it probably does not comply with those rules. And so that's the first thing we would do, is we would look into that. Once we knew that the property didn't comply with standards, it's a lot easier to go and ask for compensation. You know, if you're on your phone walking backwards on a raised platform without a barrier, you're probably going to be partly responsible, but that doesn't mean you don't have a case. That just means that your damages get reduced by the percentage that you're at fault. Okay. So if it was a jury case, which it wouldn't be with the government, but let's say a judge is looking at the case and says, you know what, you're 50% to blame. If your damages were $200,000, you'd get $100,000. So still probably worth your while. So definitely you want to get a lawyer in a situation like that, because you want them to hire the right experts to inspect the property. If you have somebody with you, hopefully that person's taking photos, because, you know, sometimes temporarily there are no barriers. And if that's the case, you know, you want to capture that. You know, if you have gone around something that's got this area closed and you've gone around, we've had that before too. There's a barrier, somebody goes over the barrier and then falls. Ooh. That's going to be a difficult case for you. But here is something that I can't emphasize enough. If you are on a government property, whether it's municipal, provincial, or federal, there are extremely short time limits to give notice. Doesn't mean you have to sue, but you have to give notice that you might sue. And like, it can be as short as 7 days. So you want to get on that. And a personal injury lawyer law firm can help you do that. But you can also just do it. Like, don't wait to see a lawyer. If you can't get in to see a lawyer, go on the website and file a claim. Like in the city, if it's, you know, file a claim and then the name of the city, the website will come up and it'll tell you how to do it. And it's often just a form or a letter to the provincial government or the NCC or the federal government. Just get that notice out, because it can be a real barrier down the line. Email,
does that suffice?
Yeah. The legislation says it's got to be a certain format.
Okay.
But if you do something, you're probably going to be all right.
And you keep a record of that,
of course. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, if, you know, web forms, most web forms will give you a confirmation.
Yes.
But they don't all. So take a screenshot or something to show that you sent it.
8:52, we're continuing our discussion, Ask the Expert, with Brenda Hollingsworth of Auger Hollingsworth. Now, if you want to contact Auger Hollingsworth, there's their information. Email info@ottawalawfirm.ca. You can reach them. There's their website as well. Their phone number and their address. They're at 1443 Woodruff Avenue as well. They're on O'Connor Street, 304 O'Connor Street. So let's get back to it and get to scenario number 3, Brenda. Okay, here we go. We're going to read this one out here for you. So you are cycling on a bike path. You come around the corner and suddenly you're hit head on by another cyclist who is on your side of the path. You fly over your handlebars and suffer a broken jaw. Is there anyone you can sue? Are there differences between a bike-on-bike collision versus a collision with a motor vehicle? Brenda.
Yeah, so this is a scenario we've had a number of times in the last couple of years. Cycling becomes more popular, people on those narrow bike paths, sometimes there are problems. So the answer is an at-fault cyclist is at fault just like an at-fault vehicle is at fault. So yes, you can sue. The issue is going to be whether that at-fault cyclist has any money, right?
Yes, yes.
Because there's no point suing someone who can't pay.
Okay.
And so a lot of times we're successful in getting compensation through the at-fault cyclist's home insurance. People are surprised by that. Their home insurance or their tenant insurance. If they have a liability policy under either of those types of insurance policies, it's really not very different than a car claim. And so, you know, that's something that we would investigate early on. There's no point going through a lawsuit to find out there's no way to collect. So we would investigate that pretty quickly. And if there's an insurance policy we can tap into, you've got a lawsuit.
Okay, Brenda, how does the individual who was hit by the other cyclist, how do they successfully gather that information? Do you have any tips for that?
Yeah, so you definitely do not want to leave the scene of a serious cycling accident without the other side's contact information. We're pretty good at we can do property searches. We have ways of finding out.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Okay, we've got a viewer question for you,
Yes.
Brenda. Let's get to it. I live in an assisted living facility and was injured when a shelf fell and caused a head injury. Are there legal steps I can take? That's from Christine.
Yeah, and we have cases like this fairly often where things fall. We have ceilings falling, other kinds of fixtures falling. So yes, if you live in a facility that's maintained by someone else and something goes wrong, you should definitely contact a lawyer, free consultation, and we can let you know what your options are. But that is definitely the type of scenario where we can help. So you're going to want to reach out promptly because there's time limits, but definitely something like that we can help with.
Brenda Hollingsworth from Auger Hollingsworth. It's always really very informative speaking with you. Thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, my pleasure. Nice
Appreciate
to see you.
that. Thank you so much. Great to see you as well. Once again, if you have any questions for Auger Hollingsworth, you can email them. info@ottawalawfirm.ca. You see their information there. They got a website as well. And their phone number, 613-233-4529. And they're on Woodruff Avenue as well as 304 O'Connor Street. Once again, thank you to Brenda for that Ask the Expert.